Salespeople today are under tremendous pressure to perform. While there are a lot of ways by which salespeople can increase their performance, one of the main things that most people forget is salespeople have to adapt according to what is happening with the customers. There's a lot of work that now says that a lot of your customers are doing their homework online, and close to 57% of a buying decision is made before a salesperson is involved. The question is this really true? Is this really how procurement and the customer side works? So we actually went about doing research, not just looking at what is literature saying out there, but we also went and talked to a bunch of procurement folks. And what we found out was pretty interesting. It was very interesting about how structured procurement is in terms of evaluating and negotiating with their suppliers. And what we found out was a 4-stage process that most procurement organizations got involved in. And it is important for sales organizations to realize these and then tailor their strategy in line with what the procurement organization is doing. Now, if you look at the procurement organization, they've come a long way since the 1960s and 70s, where they were just seen as a cost-cutting measure, and to the point right now where over the years they've actually become more professional, and they've become much more in terms of strategic procurement, or looking at ways by which they become a strategy that many companies use to actually keep their costs under control. So procurement has become much more strategic. Now, this transition has happened with a kind of a stepwise approach that they actually take. Most procurement, first of all, take a look at all of their products and put them into 4 buckets. Now, the 4 buckets involve high profitability, high risk, and these are what are called strategic items, and this is something that is taken very seriously by almost everybody within the customer's organization, and top management is also involved. Now, the flip side of this, of course, are the relatively simpler products. Those are the kind of products which there are plenty of suppliers out there, a lot of substitutes, and the products do not have a big impact on the profitability of the purchasing firm. So these are what we call non-critical items. Now, there are certain items which are termed leverage items. Now, leverage items are high on profitability but low on supplier risk. Now, when you have certain products where you know that there are plenty of other suppliers out there, but it is pretty important to you, but you know that you can actually use your strength because there are plenty of suppliers, and then you have much more of a negotiation and bargaining power. The other side is, of course, you have the bottleneck products where the profitability might not be high, but unfortunately you might not have too many suppliers. Now, what a sales organization needs to understand is that when your procurement is classifying their buying products into these different criteria, they're going to have a different strategy towards dealing with their sales, dealing with the sales counterpart from the supplier organization. The next step that the procurement organization does is, yes, they have put them into the different buckets, then they start doing the analysis. They do a market analysis. They take a look at the vendors or the suppliers. They look at the supplier history, their supplier size. They're dealing with other similar kinds of situations, and they do a lot of market analysis before realizing what is the best possible strategy to deal with different suppliers. That brings us to the third point, which is, once I've done my portfolio of all the different products into the different buckets, then I start doing my market analysis. Then I start deciding what is the right strategy to be dealing with my suppliers. And of course, there are 3 different kinds of strategies. One is, of course, is the balance strategy, where you want to come off as being in a situation where you want to leverage your power, but you also realize that the supplier is also in a position of power, so you need to have a balanced strategy. You could also use a leveraging strategy or a more of an aggressive strategy where you might have more power on your side and you might want to use that to actually get better terms and conditions from the supplier. And the last one is a defensive strategy where you know, even though you're on the procurement side, you are under risk of your supplier walking away and you being left in the dark. So you need to have different kinds of strategies and different kinds of negotiation tactics. And salespeople from your side, the more you understand the different strategies being deployed, the more likely you are to be prepared to deal with the right kind of tactics to influence the buyer. You could do all the first three steps, but you then have to make sure that based on what you've learned, the procurement organization might actually strategically go about building the necessary capabilities to be able to do the research, to be able to have the right kind of systems to keep track of their suppliers. And essentially, the more organized they are, the more you know that they're also going to leverage that level of knowledge with you as a supplier. So understanding these four different aspects of how a procurement organization works is going to go a long way towards shaping your Salesforce strategy.